Samantha. Thank you. Okay, I'm calling to order the Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, March 4th. It is fully remote participation by Zoom. And the first thing I'm doing is calling to order and a roll call of everyone attending on the Finance Committee. So I start with Joe Wright.
Present.
Chris Glowacki.
Here.
Peter Schaefer.
Here.
Jeremy Bloomer.
Here.
Stephen Morey.
Here.
Jill Veith.
Here.
Denise is here. Okay, I have one change to the agenda before I ask for approval of the agenda. My misunderstanding of a email trail. So agenda item number 4, citizen request for reconsideration.
That's what we're talking about.
So whoever isn't muted, please mute. Citizen request for reconsideration of committee's recommendation on Article 66 is withdrawn. So with taking off agenda item number 4, may I have an approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Made by Joe, seconded by Jill, or made by Peter. I'm sorry, I didn't keep track. Joe?
Aye.
Let's see. Chris?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Stephen?
Aye.
Thank you. Denise, aye. Okay. And now I'm going to open it up for public comment. And Kit, I believe you have your hand raised for public comment. Please go ahead.
I just want to thank you because that agenda item was put on for something I was asking for, but I was not ever asking that the FinCom reconsider its positive recommendation on Article 66 or any other short-term rental article. What I was hoping to accomplish is the reopening of the public hearing portion for Article 66, just to ask for a clarification of Dr. Baltzer reporting, excuse me, a 15% decline in short-term rental rooms occupancy tax from 23 to 24, as opposed to Brian Turbot reporting a 7.9% increase in the same revenue for the same period. I thought this was a huge discrepancy. One was saying it was a negative change. The other one was saying it was a positive change. And I felt this deserved to be addressed, especially as Dr. Baltzer said that Brian's numbers would support her 15% decline. I don't know if you remember, but Brian had left the meeting, returned, reported his findings after 66's public hearing had closed, and there was no chance to ask about this discrepancy. I had raised my hand to ask this question, but because the FinCom had moved on and was deliberating its recommendation, I was told I couldn't speak then, but I'd have a chance later in the meeting. FinCom voted a positive recommendation on Article 66, and there was no point left in the meeting when I could have asked what I thought was a pertinent question. I realized that should the public hearing on Article 66 be reopened, I most likely will be the only member of the public to ask a question, but I don't really think that's reason to not reopen it. I have no interest at all in impeding any of the work of the town. Quite the contrary. I respect everyone's effort and only wish to enhance and not detract from our political process. As always, thank you so much for what you all do. I know it's, I don't want to say it's a labor of love, but I know it's a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Kit. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask Brian to just share the numbers, and then I think that will conclude what you had wanted to achieve with this. So, Brian, over to you, please. And I'm going to step away for a second, folks, to get a headset. Otherwise, you're going to hear my barking dogs for the next 2 hours.
Well, I think the only thing that we need to confirm is when the actual 15% decline occurred, which I think is where the confusion may lie, if I understood, Madam Chair, the previous speaker correctly. And the 15% decline is related to the receipts in the first quarter of 2025, which was the payment in September of 2024. We received $5.9 million for that payment in total for room occupancy tax. And in the same period for fiscal 24, which would have been September of 2023, we received $7,021,000, which is the 15% decline. So on 23 to 24, the town did experience a 7.8% increase on a year over the trailing periods for those periods. But I think that the only point of confusion is when the 15% decline happened, which was in fiscal 25 for the first payment, which we received on September 30th of 2024.
Brian, basically both are true.
Yes.
Okay.
Just the timing of, I think, when everybody's understanding may not have been the same, that's all, of the timing of the payments.
Madam Chair, may I ask Brian a quick question?
Sure, Kit, go
For
ahead.
you, obviously. Okay, that's for the, what did you say it was for the quarter ending when?
Which part? I mean, I just said a lot, so I'm trying to understand which part you're asking me to confirm.
The 15% decline is
So the
for,
15% was for the first quarter of first payment for fiscal year 2025, which was received in September of 2024. That payment in aggregate was $5,967,000.
right. I don't have the numbers in front of me for what the second quarter payment was. And you can,
$5,708,000, which is
right. And
so-
if you want to correct my math, that shows that the decline at that point is only 4.07%.
correct. The overall decline as of December is only about a 4.05%, I think, is what we've calculated decline. So we've made up some of the ground that we had lost, which we had told everybody in December that we were waiting for that payment to see if we made up any of that ground. But that's
Right.
correct.
And have you received the third quarter payment yet?
No, it will not be received until the end of March.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you all
You're
here.
welcome.
Thank you, Kit. Okay. Is there any other public comment of anything that is not on our agenda? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment and move on to what is now agenda item number 5, review and approval of Finance Committee meeting minutes for the following dates. Votes may be taken. So I'm going to go through them in the order that they're on our agenda. I'm going to ask if there's any changes to any one of these. And if so, please speak up. And then at the end, we will make a motion to approve all of them if they should be approved, and with any changes that have been noted. So I ask the board's patience, but before I do that, I just want to say thank you so much to Steve Hunter, who has done a heroic job to get these done. And like all of you, I'm sure you went through all 33, and I only found a couple little things that needed to be changed. So yeah, before I do that, Chris, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just a quick question. I know people have historically abstained from voting on meetings they weren't at. I don't know that that's necessary there, right? That we're just voting that we accept these as the minutes of that meeting. So are we okay to not abstain from meetings we're not at and vote these as a block once any corrections have been made?
I will defer to Mr. Giorgio on that.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. That'll be a lot quicker, I'm sure.
That will be a lot quicker because I didn't write down who's at each one, except for the fact that I know Joe Wright doesn't join us on the meetings until December 14th, 2023. So, okay, March 9th. Does anyone have any changes to March 9th? Okay, March 9th, sorry, 2023. March 13th, 2023. Okay, March 14th, 2023, I had, it had just Curtis as who was attending, and I asked it be written as Curtis Barnes. Does anyone else have any changes for the 14th, March 14th, 2023? Okay, April 25th, 2023. Alrighty, May 2nd, 2023. All right, July 12th, 2023. It was Stephen Morey, Maury. We had both versions, Morey, so there was both Morys in that one. So I asked for it to be changed to Maury. Okay, and also too, folks, I didn't worry about typos if something was, misspelled other than names, which I'm sure none of you worried about either. Okay, September 12th, 2023. Alrighty. September 26th, 2023. I had changed, we had motion to accept or motion to approve, and I asked it to be changed motion to adopt because we don't have accept or approve as our normal motion. On any other changes for the September 26th, 2023? Okay, seeing none. November 2nd, 2023. Okay. December 14th, 2023. Okay. January 8th, 2024. January 11th, 2024. January 16th, 2024. Yes, Joe?
I'm sorry. I'm on the 25th, the next one, January 25th.
Okay. January 25th, 2024.
I was
Go ahead,
absent.
Joe.
I'm listed as present. I was absent.
Okay. Stephen, you got that? Okay. Otherwise, I would ask everybody who has a change to just email it to Stephen. January 30th, 2024. And I had one change to Howard Mertz, not Matt, or Howard Matz rather, not Max. So to change his last name. No other hands. February 1st, 2024. February 8th, 2024. February 12th, 2024. February 13th, 2024. February 15th, 2024. I had to change motion to accept to motion to adopt. So on that one, no others, okay. February 22nd, 2024. March
I was-
5th. Go ahead, Joe. Were you saying?
I was absent.
On the 22nd, okay. So thank you, Stephen. Steve, rather. March 5th, 2024. March 7th, 2024. March 11th, 2024. April 2nd, 2024. April 25th, 2024. May 2nd, 2024. June 4th, 2024. And I added, it said warrant must be adopted by 6/26. And I added for special town meeting. So we knew which warrant we were talking about. Okay, on the one on June 4th. July 9th, 2024. July 15th, 2024. And I had, there was a bullet that, from a comment from Jeremy, and it was council COUNSEL, not council COUNCIL. I'm sure software gets that wrong lots of times. July 16th, 2024.
I have a comment. On
Okay,
the second page, there's a motion to take no action on Article 5, and I think it should be Article 6, but I'm not sure. The next section talks about Article 6, the next sentence. It was just confusing as to whether or not, and then it goes back to Article 5 again. Confusing as to whether or not we were talking about Article 5 or Article 6.
okay. We'll look into that and then change it accordingly if it needs to be changed. Okay. December 12th, 2024.
It
And-
says.
Go ahead, Joe.
It says that the cost is 10 million. I think it should have been 100 million. This is our island home.
Okay. All right, I didn't catch that either. All right. And then January 14th, 2025.
The minutes
Joe.
actually was written, say, January 14th, 2024.
Are they 2024?
It's,
Steve?
I had the wrong date listed at the top. I've corrected it in the packet that's posted already for here.
Okay. Okay, so it's been corrected. Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments,
Madam Chair,
changes? Yes, Brian.
relative to Joe's comment, I think which referred to the special town meeting, I forget what meeting they were related, was it July 16th?
July 16th.
Both
July
article-
16th, yep.
Both Article 5 had a motion move to take no action, and Article 6 had motion not to take it and move to take no action in the warrant. So I'm not
Okay.
sure. I think they both should have that same notation in there,
Okay, good,
Well-
thank you.
just to clarify for you.
Thank you. I had to go back and look up some too. I luckily still had, because it's light reading, so I keep all the warrants that get published. All right, thank you. Any other changes? All right, seeing none, the motion would be motion to adopt the minutes as listed with the amendments as stated. Would somebody like to make that motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Made by Peter,
Second.
seconded by Jill. Okay, roll call. Chris,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jill.
Aye.
Jeremy.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right. And again, Steve, unbelievable job to get these done at this level of detail and quality. Thank you so much. Okay, item number 6. You all got a copy of the open meeting law complaint that was filed by Megan Perry Glowacki dated January 9th, 2025. We acknowledge receipt of the complaint at the time. We reviewed the allegations, which is that there hadn't been any minutes in a long time. We put together a proactive response to get them cleared up and done. And then town council has a response that they will send back to, I wrote it down, hold on a second. They will send back to the Division of Open Government, and it will be updated numbers. So we had actually, in the complaint, it said there was 55 minutes. There was actually 32 plus 12. There was actually 44 minutes that were outstanding. And so Steve will continue to work on these together with Brian and all of us to make sure that we can have a meeting by March 27th to finalize the acceptance of all outstanding minutes and then any minutes that happen in between. So, so with that, I am then going to ask either Libby or Brian to kind of jump in and say why this heroic process won't have to be repeated.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this heroic process will not have to be completed because we actually are using what's known as Otter AI to parse the meeting into digestible, readable format. And then Stephen spearheaded the effort, along with Sue, helped a little bit to get the effort off the ground. There was another person in my office, Mike Koulis, who did help a little bit to keep on the pace that we had committed to. So I do want to recognize everybody else that had kind of helped along the way. But the plan is now using Otter AI, the outline of the summary of the meeting will be available relatively shortly thereafter the meeting. What we'll have to do is then just get the download of the meeting and go in and watch it to put in names on who voted and who was in attendance. But the plan is to do that within 24 hours after the meeting, if possible, so that we can have it to the FinCom for the next meeting or the second meeting thereafter at the absolute latest. So I don't envision, now that we're using Otter AI and we don't have to literally sit there and hand write all the notes to type them in or type them in at the same time, that this will be a situation that occurs going forward.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions or comments from the Finance Committee? Joe?
Well, Could we have our own warrant item to say that that because these meetings are all videotaped, we don't need minutes?
No, it's a requirement
John,
to have minutes.
Pardon?
It's a requirement to have minutes, I believe, under the open meeting law, so I don't think we could do that.
Yeah, the videotape does not replace the requirement for written minutes of the meetings.
okay, any other questions? All right, so you all received the letter, the proposed draft letter that KP Law will file on our behalf to, again, the Division of Open Government with the updated numbers that I just spoke about, which is 32 and March 27th, 2025. Does anyone have any questions in respect of the letter? Okay, seeing no questions, may I have a motion to accept the letter and to authorize KP Law to file it on our behalf?
I move.
Second.
Thank you. Made by Joe, seconded by Peter, yeah, whatever. Okay, I'm sorry.
You can give that one to Jill.
I give that one to Joe. Thank you, Peter. Okay, roll call. Chris,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Stephen.
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Denise, I thank you. And John, thank you and your colleagues for all your support, and Brian again, Brian and Libby, thank you very much for all your support in getting this done. Okay, next up, Article 72. We had a lengthy discussion on this last time. And at this point, what I'm going to ask is Brooke, I believe, and then while we were in the middle of that lengthy discussion, we were asked if we would be happy to wait until select board could attend to discuss this. So actually, Brooke, I'm going to go over to you. What I'm going to ask people, I realized it was about 10 days ago, but at the same time, we did have a very extensive discussion on it. So anything that we talk about tonight, I would like it to be new information, not just repeating what was said 10 days ago, because we still have other articles we need to get through today. So I will be patient as much as possible, but ask you to please not be redundant. So Brooke, welcome.
So I understood that my presence here was to sort of answer questions more than make a presentation. I think my understanding was there was some confusion about the intention of the select board or what we were trying to accomplish. And I unfortunately did not have time to watch your last meeting. So if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I'd prefer to have your board members ask anything that's not clear or that would help clarify their decision-making, if that makes sense.
Yep, and I'll start, Brooke, because you already answered your own question, which is, what is the intention of the select board with this article?
Okay. So I think it's really hard to know if anyone attended the select board meeting where this warrant article was where we attempted as a board to sort it out. I think the select board has differing opinions about what we want to accomplish. And so I guess maybe the best thing to do, it's very hard being here representing my entire board, to be honest with you, because we do have different opinions, and some of what we came up with was to compromise to come to an agreement from different perspectives on this. But I would say, why don't I start with what are the issues that I see that are the purpose for amending the bylaw in the first place. And I think that there are concerns about the growth of an industry, a new sort of business model somebody's hand is up. It's not.
That's okay, Brooke. I'm not recognizing it. You have the floor.
Okay, thanks. So that there's a new business model in peer-to-peer car sharing. To my mind, it sort of has started out in a similar way to home rentals and Airbnb. Sort of you have an asset that's underutilized, and then you make use of a digital platform to put that asset into use, right? Whether that's a car or a room in your house, right? So that the origins of this business are taking underutilized assets and putting them to work. I think what the board is concerned about is that we have a rental car bylaw and a system under which car rentals have operated on Nantucket for a long time. It was established before this peer-to-peer car sharing was even envisioned. And so how do we bring the car rental bylaw into the current age where this new platform or this new way of making cars available to people who don't own them is new in the community? And how do we anticipate or evaluate positive and negative impacts of this? And how do we then amend the bylaw to address those as we perceive them to be something that needs to be dealt with, or in some cases, people's opinion is we don't need to have it. I would say speaking, and this would be my personal opinion, my concern, not the whole board, my concern is that we don't anticipate how these changes in a marketplace, what the impacts are going to be. And I think what I'm trying to do as a board member is try to think down, Matt's here too, which is great, down the road a ways to try to anticipate potential negative outcomes of a new market and try to sort of get ahead of it before, first of all, a lot of people are reliant on it in a way that isn't necessarily, we deem isn't necessarily good on a community-wide basis. And then, so how do we think forward, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And to me personally, there's a distinction between an underutilized asset that someone already has, a car that's already here in their driveway, being rented out or made available to a driver to increase the utilization of that underused asset. That's very different to me than someone bringing 5, 6, 7, 8 new vehicles to the island and using this platform to make them available as rentals. That looks to me more like a car rental agency for which we already have a bylaw. So how do we address the fact that there's this in between the intention and the use of it, we think, by a number of individuals to help pay their car payment or help make their life, a little financial boost in a high cost of living place, versus someone building a business around this model, a business that we already have regulations for and we set criteria for a number of years ago. And how do we find the balance between those two things is where what I'm trying to get at in this bylaw. So perhaps you might want to ask Matt, because what his intention is, as I said, that was sort of my personal take on it. And Matt may have a little bit of a different personal take, which ended up with this sort of compromise warrant article.
Thank you, Brooke. Matt?
Yeah, I think compromise, is a good description. In my mind, is not legal. The plain language in the original article from the town, it was plainly not legal. People were not even allowed to rent a car along with the house. It was written in a strict manner. We did that, and I was around back then. We did that for, and I've looked at some of the documents, that was done on purpose. At that point, we had about 700, and what was happening in other communities such as ours, vacation communities, was 5,000 rental cars would come to those communities for the season and then go back again. When you go to Hawaii, you go to different areas, you get out, there's a sea of rental cars, and we knew that the town doesn't have the infrastructure and the ability to handle that. There's not enough slots on the boat. There wasn't enough places to park them. And so we, at that point, made it clear that we wanted to limit it at 700. There was, it was legal at the time. There were opinions written, et cetera. It was passed by the state. So I think that part of it is, in my mind, is very clear. I looked at it and said, okay, there are, and I'm going to get the numbers a little wrong, but there's 140 that haven't been used recently. And so, okay, can we claw some of those back and use those for some of the peer-to-peer people? And how do we do that within a cap of 100, within 700 or within 800? And so that's where we landed was, okay, let's keep it within about 800. Let's allow let's claw back the ones that aren't being used, allow the existing businesses to continue and keep these under the cap. And that's kind of where we've landed as a board. The things that I think part of why we did this originally was because of the impact that this type of, like the traffic and the other issues will have on the economics of the island. And we're seeing it now. We have 22,000 cars registered in February. And that's just registered in Nantucket. That doesn't count my employees who are from other parts of Massachusetts that are here, other states that are here. It doesn't count leased cars that are elsewhere. It doesn't count the rental cars that come in the summer that are garaged elsewhere. They're all, and in the summer now, we're up over 30,000. 30,000 was kind of the magic number. 25 was what I tried to limit cars to 20 years ago. 30,000 was the number that we were warned at back during the comp plan days. We would have major gridlock that would impact businesses and impact the island. And all the places that they said it was going to be, around the airport, Nobody at Farm Road, Five Corners, it's where it is. And it's not getting better. And the idea that we can add more vehicles into the mix and that they're going to be shared and that they're going to make things better, I think that's naive. And I think that we as a community, the airport's lost money. If we turn this place into a parking lot, with cars standing for an hour and a half on certain streets, we are going to hurt hurt why people are coming here. We're going to, sort of foul our own nest, so to speak. So I think it's really important that we put forward something that keeps a cap in place. It's okay if it's a little bit more, but I think it's a huge mistake from a, long-term viability of this island to exempt this. I think it would be a huge mistake to exempt it and say, oh, you can have one, everyone can have one. There's that, I just think, or any other version of that. I understand, why the people who are doing it now would want that. I understand why their attorney's arguing what he's doing. That's great. But I think we should be thinking about the community and the common good here. And then what impacts has it had? It's already had an impact on the airport. They were down $400,000 and came to us and explained they're having a huge issue. The businesses themselves, the rental businesses that pay us a lot of money, have been impacted already. So that, that has happened over the last 3 years as this has grown. The other impact is these vehicles, it's not like they sit at people's homes and the new people who are renting them come to the home. A lot of these are parked in areas like Brant Point and downtown. As soon as we don't have a parking district, they're parked there. And so there's all sorts of issues that we are dealing with. These neighborhoods are being overrun by this sort of thing. And so there's a lot of knock-on effects to the island, to our economy, to the quality of life that I think we have to be careful to consider and not to let this be unlimited in any manner. And if you have any other questions, that's fine. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Joe?
With respect, I've read this article a number of times, and I think it needs complete redrafting. There's no definition of sticker. There's no definition of medallion. There's no definition of a RMV. There are definitions in the beginning of the article, but they don't define. I didn't see a definition for a sticker or a medallion. There is, if I look at 58-3 annual fee issuance of licenses and stickers, that paragraph doesn't mention stickers. It only mentions medallions. Are they the same thing? To me, this needs complete redrafting. The other thing is that if you have a system where the fee for a license is for a medallion is $100 if you paid the excise tax. And if you haven't paid the excise tax, it's not clear what the fee is, but we should incent, I think if we can, force people that are going to get medallions to rent cars on Nantucket to pay the excise tax here. The fee should not be less than the excise tax here. And I don't know, John, what we can do and can't do, but to me, this article is a mishmash. And I use that word with respect. I think people have spent some time, but it's not clear.
Thank you, Joe. Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Through you to Matt. You speak to enforceability. What's the point of doing it if we're not going to enforce it? Or having it if we're not going to enforce it? And are you guys going to bring forth a plan to enforce it?
Well, I think that there's a lot of things that we don't enforce, but they're rules and we don't, don't strongly enforce them. But I think, I think that there's a way to enforce them. One of the things people keep saying is, well, how do we know how many there are? Well, we'd find out very quickly if we said, in order to do this, you've got to put your name in the hat by this date. Everyone that's doing it would come out of the woodwork really quickly. And, otherwise you can't do it. We would find out really quickly. But if we say, oh, everyone can do one, it'll still be under the radar and no one will know. So, so I think putting something in place and making people stand up and put their name on a list is one of the first steps toward enforcement. I think licenses, the medallion and the sticker. Medallion is the right to have it. A sticker is a sticker that's on the bottom left of the vehicle, so you can identify it's a rental car. If these were part of this, if these were in the, if we say we had 150 peer-to-peer, they would all have a sticker on them. We'd be able to identify them. So I think those issues, that it's part of the process.
Thank you, Matt. Chief Casper, could you speak to the enforceability of this, please?
Sure. I spoke a little of it last time. I'll try not to be too redundant. Just very challenging as far as like many people might think that we would be able to go on, say Turo, for example, see a list of cars and then maybe go to their houses and knock on doors and try to figure out what's going on. But this is not a bylaw that restricts advertising your car for rental, right? So I don't even have a violation until I have an actual rental. So we would need to encounter someone who's rented it. And the only time I can ever imagine it happening where we would be able to do enforcement is if we responded to, say, a car accident and the person said, oh, it's not my car, I rented it on Turo. We would have a very clear violation then. But as far as trying to figure out how to proactively go out and identify people who are doing this, I really can't think of a good way to do that. That's legal. We can't go on to private property. We can't pull over cars that we think might be a Turo car. We don't have any reason to make a motor vehicle stop. So there's some real legal challenges around enforcement other than that very obvious example of a car accident where someone admits that it's a Turo vehicle that they're in.
Thank you, Chief Casper. Chris, did that answer your question in respect of enforcement? Thank you. Peter? You're muted, Peter. You're muted.
Sorry. A couple questions. Does anybody know what the law is in Massachusetts about commercial vehicles? I know in New Jersey, if you have a commercial vehicle, you have to say who owns it, who the owner is on the vehicle. Do we have anything like that in Massachusetts?
And Chief Casper, I think you would be the best place to know that.
Yeah, you don't have to have the name of your company on it for just a regular commercial vehicle. You'll see a lot of commercial vehicles operating that have a commercial plate, which very clearly says commercial on it. And there are particular restrictions around posting on the outside of your vehicle for particular types of businesses, but not every type of commercial vehicle would qualify.
Okay. Who gets the excise tax money? Goes to the state? Does anybody know that? Okay.
Brian,
I can try.
I mean, excise tax money is remitted to the town, so the town receives all the excise, motor vehicle excise tax money.
So 100% of it.
Mhm.
Okay. My last question is, am I missing something, or is really all this article is setting a number and going forward from there? Is there something more that I'm missing here? Let's see, Brooke wants to answer.
Brooke?
So I went through the article before the meeting, and I think there's a couple of things. So under the definition of a rental car agency, we're proposing added language that tightens up the definition to include peer-to-peer car sharing. While Matt believes that the current language clearly includes that, this would definitively include peer-to-peer car sharing as a rental activity. And then we've changed the language with regard to the excise tax. We've changed to I think it was Joe's point that yes, $100. And just to clarify, if you pay excise tax and the car is registered in Nantucket, you do not pay that fee. You pay it in lieu of the excise tax. I agree that number is outdated. And this proposed language change pulls the $100 number and leaves it in the board's hands to set that fee. So it gives us flexibility to adapt it over time. And Brian Riley, if I'm getting any of this wrong, please chime in. And then the current cap for rental medallions, or so the number of cars that could be rented out, is 700. But this allows us to issue an additional 100 medallions. And that the idea is, in my mind, there's a transition between the ones that are unused that we need to get back to make available to peer-to-peer car sharing rentals. So it gives us the leeway to add more while we're taking them back, and then also balance the total number over time to make sure that the needs of the rental car agencies and that this peer-to-peer sharing market are met adequately, but still maintain a total cap limit. And then
Brooke, just one thing about that. Do we have the legal right to take back the medallions?
So that was you actually, that was where I was going next, Peter.
I'm sorry.
Interrupted me, sorry. We are adding language that gives the select board express permission to take back unused medallions. So we've clarified that language, right, Brian?
Yes, that's correct. And my opinion is because anybody who's a rental agency needs an annual license as well. And so, the board may have one reason or another to not give somebody a license. And I don't see that the town certainly has the legal right to do that. I just wanted to throw in one last thing about the excise tax. It is sort of an interesting provision, but that actually goes back to the, I think, 1989 Special Act, which authorized the town to adopt this bylaw. And that act says that rental agencies shall obtain a license, they shall pay a fee. However, that no fee is required if the vehicle itself has paid excise tax to the town of Nantucket. So we really can't change that without going back to the legislature. But we can change the fee.
Thank you, Brian. Joe?
The fee should be the excise tax that would be payable on the vehicle. That's very simple and it's very fair. If someone lives on Nantucket, has a car that they've got registered in Nantucket and has paid the tax, they can get a medallion or a sticker or a license or whatever. It's not clear what they need. I think they need a license. But to my way of thinking, I Googled just rental cars Nantucket, and does Turo have a license? Does anybody know?
Turo is a peer-to-peer. It's a software. It's an app.
Don't they need a license? Doesn't this say that you need a license to rent cars in Nantucket?
As far as I know, Turo doesn't have a license from anywhere in the country. And I think certainly their answer would be, well, we're not renting the cars. We're just enabling private parties to rent to another person.
If the definition doesn't catch that, this is more or less useless. Nantucket Island Rent-A-Car, do they have a license? Kayak, do they have a license? Young's Bicycle Shop, do they have a license? Expedia, do they have a license?
No.
They're all advertise themselves as being renting cars. I think
If I may, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Brooke. Yes, go ahead,
I
Brooke.
think, Joe, what we're trying to address is this in-between space. These platforms are not rental car agencies. They don't own and rent cars. A rental car agency owns and rents a car. So they just provide the connection between the person who wants to own and rent the car and the individual who wants to rent it. They are not executing the rental. As I understand it, and Brian, you can correct me, the rental is between the car owner and the customer directly. So,
but as I read this, Brooke, this says that if you're going to rent cars on Nantucket, you have to have a license.
all right.
Well,
Turo doesn't rent them. Expedia doesn't rent them. They get
Marion, if that's you speaking, you have to be
Oh, I'm
recognized. and
sorry. Oh,
That's okay. You just please go to mute. Thanks, Marion. Okay. I'm taking comments from the committee first before I'll look for comments for the public. Brooke, go ahead.
So Joe, I understand what you're saying, but that's not the legal framework. We can't apply it because that's not the legal framework.
I'm not a lawyer. I've read it, and to me, I can't understand it the way it's written. And most legal stuff I can understand.
I don't
I
know.
think it needs redrafting.
Jill, you had your hand up? Yep, please.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're trying to do, I hear what Brooke's saying about getting ahead of it, and I appreciate that. But we don't have any guidance from the state. And I personally would just feel more comfortable if the state gave us guidance, because it seems to me that the car rental bylaw is becoming the dinosaur. And it seems like we're probably going to need a bylaw that's more about peer-to-peer. And they're all kind of converging together a little bit, but I don't see how we add Turo as a rental car when the use of that car is probably not always as a rental car. It's also a personal car. That isn't the same as the cars in the rental car bylaw.
Thank you, Jill. Matt, Joe, let a few other people talk, please, first. Matt?
No, I think, I think that there's a couple things going on. First off, there is one of the things we're taking into consideration is there has been, we have been challenged. The town has gotten a couple different letters from the rental car companies who are considering this an asset. I hope that those have been shared with your group, along with, you had a bunch of questions, if those are all answered. And so what we're trying to do is find something that will work for some of the peer-to-peer people, if not most of them, and work for the existing rental car companies. You are considered a rental car company if you rent your car. It doesn't have to be a building. There doesn't have to be a brick and mortar or a different license or whatever. Just the act of renting your car makes you a rental car company the way we've written it. And I think that's, I think that's not clear sometimes, and the other part is, this is different than Airbnb, because we didn't have a law in place that said you can't rent your house, or they're only renting 100 houses. This is different. The state has given us permission. The state gave us a law that says you can cap your number of rental cars to 700, and you can define them the way we defined them in that law. So one thing is different is that people are trying to skirt the existing law that we have in place. And so if that wants to change, sure, then we can, as a community, we'll change it. But I don't think this was nobody knows, it's hard to enforce, and, how do you do it fairly, et cetera. I agree with all that, but this is different than that, because it was not, the state did give us permission to do this. And it's been in place for a long time, and there's expectations from rental car companies who have paid the town a lot of money and have spent and done a lot of, good for the community. that consider what they have an asset that we are now infringing on and taking away. And so we're trying to find the middle ground, that will work for both without flooding, and I would like to not flood the island with, a few thousand more cars. So.
Brooke?
Can I ask Matt a question, actually, Denise? Sorry.
Yeah, okay, Jill and then Brooke and then Joe, I'll go back to you.
All right, Matt, what year was, and forgive me, what year was the rental car bylaw that Nantucket did? It sounds like the state gave permission back in the 80s. But when does anyone know that? I thought you would know better than anyone.
I don't have it memorized. It was in the 80s, early 90s. It was,
Okay,
this was approved.
Yeah,
by the state.
and the medallions were set at what number in the 80s?
Yeah, 700. It's been at 700 from the beginning.
Since the 80s. And the population has exploded.
Mhm.
So even if you're just adding 100 medallions, that doesn't seem like it's keeping up with the population on the island. It's certainly not keeping up with the number of cars. Right?
Well,
And
it
if
is.
these cars are
but-
on the island, it seems like a lot of them, they're paying excise tax. We're benefiting from that.
Well, so we are, but so if we just made it unlimited for everybody, then, Hertz and everybody could fill the boats and bring thousands more over. All the islanders could, could buy another car. A lot of people that are doing this are not just sharing their car when they're at work. They don't just drive to work and then someone shows up and takes it. This is a separate small business, is in large part. And I think that, I think in my mind, a lot of this is a math equation. The island has only so many miles of roads. We have only so many parking spaces, and we can't be, if we want to retain what makes people want to spend millions of dollars to buy houses and thousands of dollars to visit and everything else, if we don't retain the charm and the, sort of that part of the island, if we become, 2 months of where we're like New York City and you're stuck in traffic for an hour or two, that's going to impact all of us very severely. And I think so that is where, from a financial standpoint and protection of the island's economy, I think that's where, the FinCom should be thinking, I really do, but.
Yeah, but surely you can agree that the number of medallions not changing since the 80s seems really off.
I think we're lucky that it hasn't.
Yeah,
I
I'm kind
think
of
we're
amazed
lucky
that it's as
hasn't.
good as it is in spite of the population growth that I know you're concerned about in the car growth. But
Yeah,
I
I'm
think that the
fortunate to have it.
medallions should be increased based on what I'm hearing you say. It just sounds like you should at least consider tracking medallions with population or with the number of cars based on the excise tax and how much that has grown. And maybe that's a better model for you. That's my only concern, but I hear what you're saying, that it is.
And my point.
And they get a 1099 and I think it's a business, actually, even if it's one car. I personally think it's a business. But they're not in the same, it's not the same business, and I don't want to hurt the existing companies either. So I hear that.
But we don't have 700 rental cars. Let's be clear. We have 542. So there's 158 sitting out there so you can talk about 700, but we don't have 700. So there's obviously a requirement. There's a customer requirement that we're not meeting with the 558 that's actually live. Anyway, Joe, I'll go to you and then Brooke and then Jeremy.
I'm going to read from 58.2 as this article is drafted. No person, business, or corporation shall engage in the business of renting, leasing, or keeping for rent or lease any motor vehicle without first being licensed annually by the select board to do so. To me, that says Truro should have a license, Expedia should have a license, Nantucket Windmills got a license, Nantucket Island Rent-A-Car should have a license, Young's Bicycle Shop should have a license. That's number one. Number two, the fee should be the excise tax for that vehicle on the island. Very simple. If they paid the excise tax, they don't have to pay a fee for a license, for a sticker. If they haven't paid the excise tax and they want a sticker, they have to pay the excise tax, or they have to pay a fee equal to the excise tax. That's not what this says. It says, I think it could say that with some rewording, but, and we have to eliminate the discrepancy between stickers and medallions. It's not legal. It's confusing. And I'm not a lawyer.
Okay, Brooke, you've been very patient, thank you, and then I'll go to Jeremy.
So to Jill's point earlier, I've lost my train of thought here. Hank, give me 2 seconds. Yeah, I wanted to reiterate that not all the medallions have ever been used. So we know now whether or not there's an industry holding medallions because supply and demand means that if there's fewer cars, less competition, higher prices, that's a question. So we are, these changes seek to solve for that, right? By taking back the medallions. And we're creating a fairer market by taking those back and issuing them to folks who own cars who want to rent them individually through the peer-to-peer platform in competition, which is where we're at with the rental car agencies, right? Does that have a community benefit? I think to Matt's point, that the unlimited growth of the number of rental cars on Nantucket, I don't think is a good goal, which is, and I think having a cap on the number of rental cars, but I think a rental car is a rental car, whether it's an individual through peer-to-peer or an agency. It's a car being rented to someone for use by someone that is not the owner of that vehicle, right? That's a definition. To Joe's point about a license, in this case, the way we've written this, a peer-to-peer car sharing participant would be issued a license as a car rental agency, and then they would also need a medallion, which is a sticker for their car. They would be getting two things: a license as an agency, because under this definition, they are a rental car agency, and each vehicle they wanted to rent would have to qualify for and get a medallion, and then the medallion in it turns into a sticker that goes on the car. That's how this is written. So the physical manifestation of a medallion is a sticker on the car, is why those two words are used differently in my understanding. But what we're trying to do is open up the car rental, the limit. We set a limit for the community, and we want to open the availability of those medallions or the ability to individual car owners who are using the platform. That's what this is trying to accomplish.
Thank you, Brooke. Jeremy?
Brooke and Matt, my suggestion is that you go back and retool this a bit, because as I listen, I believe the problem you're trying to solve is the true small business guys who bring over 6 or 7 cars and operate them under the Turo platform. That seems to be the problem that you're trying to eliminate. As far as the existing car rental companies, I find it very interesting that they only use 540 out of 700. They charge $500 a day, and they're competing against Turo's charging $100 a day. So in many ways, I think this effort to deal with the problem, which I laud you, I think you've conflated a whole bunch of things. And I would suggest you go back and figure out how to just prevent the ferry boat from bringing over all the new Turo cars and deal with peer-to-peer of the existing people. And then separately, if the car companies with 700, they can't rent out more than 540 at 500, well, you should claw that back.
Amy, thank you, Jeremy. Amy, quick question. I believe there's a waiting list to get medallions. So the fact that let's say we were able to claw back the 158 that are being unused. They would not go to Turo cars because there's already a waiting list of about 25 different people that want to do this. Is that true?
Well, that's a complicated answer. So we are establishing a waiting list based on an informal form I've had up for years for folks that want info when a medallion becomes available. So the select board voted to establish a waiting list procedure to deal with, because we had no established process for dealing with unused medallions. So we're putting that together based on that vote. So we know what it kind of looks like. So that's available because we do have 8 that are currently available because a company that went out of business a while ago. So those are existing there, and there's not any issue with that. So as far as I do have that question too about setting that up now, if those folks are included, that's a legal question right now. The clawback situation, again, this bylaw amendment is again wanting to put in place better language that gives the select board more active management of this process year to year, giving them also an additional I don't know if we landed on 100, 150 medallions to deal with fluctuations in the market and things of that sort, so they can use their discretion on that. So we're not back here every year. So I think that's been the main goal. So we do wish to establish a process, a waiting list. I don't know if I feel comfortable answering that right now, if it's going to go to Turo people before this goes through or not. I'm unsure of that right now legally, but we are setting that up so it is ready, and we have some sort of process in place. So when we are ready to either go forward with the 8, or if this passes, clawing back, we'll have that available.
I remember when I remember when you and I met last year, because we talked about, and the clawing back failed last year at town meeting. So and it seemed like a good idea last year to have the clawing back in, and I was, anyway. And you and I did meet, and you did have a waiting list at the time. So, the conversation has been, well, we'll claw back the 150, and then we'll have another 100, and Turo can have those. But Turo isn't first in line necessarily. Right now, there's no line, but pretend there was a line. So it's okay.
Yeah.
All right. But I just wanted to make clear that it isn't just Turo that's looking to get access to the unused.
Correct.
Undeployed. I'll say undeployed. They're used. They're just not deployed.
Correct.
So.
And if I may, I know we talk about the unused, and I've submitted that information over the years during renewals, and it's only really one, obviously, agency that we have that issue with. I don't want the others branded that they're not using them. That's not the case. Most of them are using them each year. So it's just one specific case right now.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no more questions for the committee, then I will go to the public. iPad 2, could you please be a human instead of iPad 2? Or not? You have to unmute if you're speaking.
It's Stephen Cohen, Madam Chair.
Okay.
If the staff could update it, that would be helpful.
Thank you. There we go.
I plan on making 3 points that are not repeating what I said last time, but I do want to address one point that the commission has been discussing, which is this idea that having Turo be unlimited would yield thousands of new cars. I think that is false, dramatically false. For one reason, Turo started 12 years ago, and it's a Massachusetts company, and right now there are about 300 users on Nantucket. There's like 290 something users on Nantucket. And among them, there is only about 350 cars. So this idea that people are using 5, 6, 7, 8 cars, that's really only a handful of people. Nearly all the people use only 1 car, and a few people might have 2 or 3. But the people that have 5 or 6 are very limited. But the point is that there are 80,000 people on that come to Nantucket in the summer. I think none of us believe that those people are using 550 cars. So what the reality is that regardless of Turo, people are bringing over cars no matter what. Really, the question is, do we want to allow local people to make a little extra money, Or are we just going to require people to bring over their own cars or rent cars in Providence or Boston or on the Cape and bring them over? Because I think there is 0 people who want cars that aren't using them or that are limited by that 700 number. Those cars are coming over anyway. It's just a matter of who owns them and whether or not we're using ferry weeklies to bring them over. And everybody here knows that there are 0 people who want a car that aren't going to have one. Okay, my first point is that this is not a compromise article. The auto companies are drooling over it for reasons, and they've already sent them in writing and at your last meeting. The first thing is that the new rules that would go in place, they think they're exempt from, or they would fight legally for years to protect themselves. There is 0 chance of those 150 licenses that weren't used going back on the market. They're going to be clawing them. Either they would just activate them to prevent that from happening, or they would sue the town and say, you can't change it, and then take them away from me. And so the idea that there might be 100 licenses available that a lot of people want is true, but 100, it's not going to be 250 for years at least. So this would effectively kill Turo, and that's why the auto rental companies are drooling over it. If there was only 100 Turo licenses available, it would kill Turo and Nantucket, which is exactly what they want to see, because they don't like the competition from people who are providing better pricing and better customer service. So that's one issue. The second issue is, as drafted, the police chief has already told you twice, it's 100% unenforceable. Okay, what she hasn't mentioned is that it also would require police resources during the summer. I don't think anybody on the FinCom who thinks that using police resources during the summer for Turo is a good idea. In the same way that there are no rules against Uber and Lyft, because there's no problems with Uber and Lyft, even though they compete with the taxis, let's see a problem before spending police resources on enforcing something that is unenforceable. From a finance committee point of view, it has to seem irrational to spend police resources like that at that time. And my third point is that, the select board made it very clear that they don't necessarily understand what the problems may or may not be with Turo, but that they want to get ahead of it. And we appreciate that, and we agree with that, but this doesn't do that. This article, by adding Turo or peer-to-peer car sharing to car rental rules, the only thing you've done is essentially instill a cap, but you don't have any rules that deal with any of the dozen or more concerns that the select board said they would want to look into. And by doing it this way, by keeping it in the chapter 58 and going through town meeting, you're looking at years and years before there's any real regulations, instead of basically immediately. So I would say that the problem here is not that you might regulate Turo, which, my client. The problem is you're never going to regulate Turo because you're going through the wrong process. So I do have a recommendation that I think would be good for everybody. And that is, you should be exempting peer-to-peer car sharing from the auto rental rules in 58. And then you should have a better definition of peer-to-peer car sharing, which I've submitted in writing. And then the most important thing I think you should do is authorize the select board to issue its own regulations related to peer-to-peer car sharing. And that way the select board could immediately require anyone doing peer-to-peer car sharing to purchase a license, pay a fee, get a sticker, put it on their car, and you would know immediately how many people there are, how many cars there are, where they are, who owns them, what neighborhoods they're in, where they're parked, and you could collect other information. And then if the select board determined, through the police department or otherwise, that there were rules that needed to be put in place, they would be authorized to issue those rules without going back through town meeting, which obviously is not a efficient way to do things. So that's my recommendation. Exempt peer-to-peer, issue a better definition of peer-to-peer that I've given in writing, and then authorize the select board to issue regulations related to peer-to-peer. Because right now there's no rules in the auto regulation that do anything about any of the concerns that were raised. And it doesn't make any sense to regulate auto rental companies the way you would potentially want to regulate peer-to-peer. And there's no reason why you'd want to regulate peer-to-peer the way you regulate auto companies. It's just totally different businesses and have totally different issues and should be regulated separately. So that's my recommendation to the board. Let's do this the right way. Let's keep it simple and let's regulate peer-to-peer as needed, if needed, through the select board. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Art, I'll get to you in a minute. I'm going to go to Joe in case he has a question for Stephen, and then I'll come to you. Thank you, Art, for your patience. Joe?
To me, there are two issues here. Number one is the excise tax. To have a system where if you only pay $100 and you can get the car licensed in Connecticut or in Massachusetts or in Texas and pay a very low excise tax, that doesn't make any sense. So number one, we want to protect the right of Nantucket people who own cars that they want to monetize and who have paid the excise tax, that for $100 they can get a license and a medallion if they paid the excise tax. Number two, we don't want people bringing over 7 or 8 cars with licenses in Texas or somewhere else with low places with low excise tax. We don't want that. We don't need, the object of the exercise is to not encourage more cars on Nantucket. We have enough. And I think that this article needs to be redrafted. It doesn't do a lot of things very well. And Mr. Cohen, with respect, your comments are exactly what you would expect from someone with Turo as a client.
Joe,
the way this is going-
I'm going to stop you on that. Joe, please. The fact that, yes, that's, okay, Joe. And also, Joe, you've mentioned now at least 4 times that it needs to be rewritten. We understand that. I'm really looking forward to no redundancy today. I realize it's a dream, but it's a dream I have. So Art, over to you, please.
All right, I'm going to keep the dream alive. Thank you, Arthur Gasparo. I would like to speak in support of the select board's article. I think that they've got it right. And that you have the previous authorization under that home rule petition, and this is where this is appropriately regulated. I think there's a need for this, and I think it actually helps the folks that want to do Turo, because right now you can't at all. And this establishes that framework to get it started. Is it perfect? And will there be challenges for enforcement? Certainly, as there are in most things on Nantucket, but at least by going this route in support of this article, there's an ability to, increase the cap, to Ms. Veith's point. There's an ability to understand that, get a better registry going and understand which the license, framework to, whether it's claw back or, reallocate those unused licenses. So I think that this actually will help, and that it's not letting it go completely wide open, but provides the ability to have this work. And I think that I'd like to applaud the select board for that. That's my, as a citizen hat. Speaking as the chair of the airport commission, we've put this on our agenda for our meeting next week to review it collectively and see whether there's anything, that may come out of that from the airport. What I would share with you is that Turo, any business that operates out of the airport, Uber, Lyft, even all of the other businesses, they pay a license fee, and there's, it's a regulated and, environment. And by doing this, the airport would then be able to enter into a contract with Turo to then allow the Turo operators to operate. Currently, we've been on hold on that because we want, as a commission, and I think as the airport, we wanted to be very cognizant of not authorizing an operator that essentially ran afoul of the town bylaw in Chapter 58. And so should this pass, then the airport could then get into the business agreement with Turo, and I think that would also be helpful and remain You also have your car agency as tenants and the income that comes from there. So I think this is legitimately a compromise article that doesn't go where you currently have a complete ban. It doesn't go to wide open, and establishes sort of a bit of a framework. And finally, I did serve for 20 years on the Traffic Safety Committee, and I think that I have a unique perspective to offer there. Having, looked at this type stuff for, what the number one complaint I think of islanders and visitors alike is probably traffic. And so you have to be very careful that if you were to just let this go wide open and essentially establish a market incentive for the creation of these businesses completely unregulated, that there could be further detrimental impact on the island and the community. And I don't think that it should be directly correlated to the number of licenses to the population, but to try to balance that the need versus the impact, which I think would appropriately be able to be done through town administration licensing under the direction of the select board. So again, I'll just finish with hoping that you would support the select board's article. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Stephen Cohen?
Yeah, if I could just briefly, Truro would love to enter into an agreement with the airport. Truro has agreements with 145 airports throughout the country, and that would collect those fees for the airport and put rules in place. And if people violated those rules, they would be dropped from the Truro app, and that's happened across the country. Truro would love to enter into already has a good neighbor policy, and if people don't follow the good neighbor policy, they get dropped, and we could add things that the town wants, and that would keep enforcement out of the town's lap to some extent. And there's already state law pending on this. Right now, there's bills that the state is likely to act on this same way it acted on Uber and Lyft. And so the town might want to do that. The problem with this article as drafted is that except for a cap, it essentially has no regulations on Turo and on peer-to-peer car sharing, and anything that the select board wanted to do is not authorized. They don't have the ability to issue regulations. And so what I'm asking the board to do is take this out of chapter 58 and authorize the select board to issue any regulations that they want that make sense for Turo. That's a much better solution than this current solution of just having a cap with no rules. If the select board wants to have a cap separately, they could do that. What we heard from the select board is they may want to have a bunch of rules related to peer-to-peer car sharing, and they're not authorized to do this. And I'm still suggesting to the board that that's what you should do. I'm not opposing a cap. I'm not opposing rules. I'm saying let's do it, but let's get out of Article 58, which is what or Chapter 58, which is what the car rental companies want you to do, because only 100 licenses would be available, and it would essentially kill Turo, and that's what they're drooling over. So it's not a compromise article; it's a kill Turo article as drafted. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Jill?
Can I ask one more question, Brian Riley, Denise?
Of course, you can ask several more questions of Brian.
Sorry,
Riley.
no, I don't want to belabor this. I know you want us to keep going.
No, it's
Brian,
okay.
is the
It's
definition of a
important.
car rental company on Nantucket in our local bylaw, is that the same as what's observed by the state? Do they have the same definition? Not necessarily the same requirements for registration or medallion.
Is Brian, you know what? I think Brian might be gone. John, Giorgio, I think it's over to you. I think Brian had to leave at 5:15 and it's 5:18.
That's
So,
correct.
John.
He did have to leave. And Jill, I'm not certain about the answer to your question. I apologize. We'll have to look at that. What is the purpose of your question?
Well, it just seems to me like if we moved forward with something like this and then our definition is not matching up with the state, and then the state is going to regulate this, maybe, like Stephen said, there are some bills that are moving forward. It just seems like then we're kind of confusing these two things. You know what I'm saying? That we're making this business we're trying to, fit a square peg in a round hole. we're trying to say you are a car rental agency, but the state is gonna come in and maybe say you're not a car rental agency. Or you are a car rental agency, but your definition is different. And so I don't like being at odds with the state, is what I'm saying.
Well, that's speculation, of course.
Yeah, but
We
there's a
don't-
good chance that the state's gonna want to get tax money out of this company.
Well, we don't know what, if any, law will be passed regulating Truro, and it could be a long time. And I guess what I would say is if the state does pass a law and the town's bylaws turn out to be inconsistent with that law, then we're gonna have to address that through a further amendment to the bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Joe?
Can I make a motion?
Let me ask the committee if they're ready for a motion. Committee, if you're ready for a motion, thumbs up. Chris isn't ready yet. Peter isn't ready yet. Oh, Chris is. Peter, are you ready for a motion or do you want further discussion? You're muted, Peter.
I guess I'm ready.
Okay. Okay, Joe, then please make a motion.
My move is that we decide take no action and ask that this be redrafted.
Okay, John, can we make a motion to have something redrafted?
I think the appropriate motion would be, I move for further study.
A move for further study, okay.
That will have the effect of killing the article for this town meeting, but it would be direction to the select board to study this further and presumably come back at a later date with a different approach. I think the planning board may have made those kinds of motions before. I know town meeting has.
Yeah, I think we might have done it once in the last 4 or 5 years, vaguely. Okay,
There will
so
be
Joe,
a motion to recommend further study.
Joe, do you want to make that motion?
Make a motion, we recommend for further study. And I'll volunteer to work with whoever, if someone wants someone mouthy to work with them, I'm game.
Okay, you have your first volunteer, if this is what this ends up being. Is there a second to that?
Second.
And a second from Peter. Okay, further discussion on the motion about further study. All right, seeing, let me hold on a second. Let me write down ayes and nays. Okay, 72. Jill,
Aye.
Aye.
Jeremy, Peter.
Aye.
Let's see, I'm running out of people here. Oh, wait a minute, hang on a second. Okay, good. Joe
Aye.
and Denise, aye, because we're down to 5. I was worried I was worried that after all of that, we didn't have a quorum.
I'm an aye, Denise.
Oh, sorry, Chris. Sorry, I lost you in my screen. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. It's 72, Article 73. General bylaw amendment, bicycle right of way.
I just want to say thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for participating. Libby, are you going to present general bylaw amendment, bicycle right of way?
If Mike Burns is not here, I will, yes. And there's really not too much to say about this, other than this has been an ongoing effort to try to provide some
Well-
additional parameters and definitions around electric bikes. That's basically it.
Well, Libby, I'll lead off with the questions this time. How would we enforce this?
Well, that's a good question, because obviously it is going to be difficult for speeds to be tracked. It's more, is Jody still on?
Yes, and Mike has just joined
Oh, good.
as well. Libby.
Well, we did talk about this a bit. I would turn it to Jody about the enforcement.
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about it. Certainly some challenges. It is pretty common for communities to have a speed limit for bicycles on bike paths, but it's not something that's really ever enforced anywhere for the reasons that you all might imagine, where it's actually just very challenging to, catch people on a bicycle and pull them over. And it's just, we don't have really a way to measure speed where we're sitting in usual spots. The way you conduct speed enforcement is typically, areas where people are speeding and you sit there and you measure speed and you pull them over if they're in a car. That's just not the case with bicycles. It's a little bit different. So this is something that is common in communities as a way to, usually people post signs and say, the speed limit is 15 or whatever it is. And hopefully bicyclists abide by that. I don't know of any enforcement efforts for speeding on bike paths on bicycles.
Thank you, Chief Casper. Mike Burns, did you want to add anything about this? It's 20 miles. It's 20 miles per hour for e-bike. And then if I approach a human or something that isn't electrified on the bike path, I have to slow down to 5 miles per hour. Is that my understanding of this article in a nutshell?
I believe so. Just to note, Joseph Topham is the author of this,
Yep.
a lot of this. So kind of lean on him to kind of explain his justifications for that. But obviously, I'll just second everything Chief Casper just mentioned about enforcement and the courtesy slowing down and just enforcing that. And whether that turns into whether it's not very friendly and we get people, a lot of complaints driven by this, that can become a bit of a nuisance element. I have more of an issue with item B in this article, which has already been approved, but regarding enforcement, everything Jody just said, I'll second that. The definitions, I'll also note, seem pretty well written, so I don't have any comments on the definitions of any of those types.
Okay, thanks. Jill, and then I'll go to Brooke.
Yes, I was wondering because you all wanted to get the digital speed monitors. Can those pick up the bikes? And I don't like those because they are not cute. Like I want them to have shingles or something really cute. So I didn't love those, but can they pick up a bike speed limit?
I can answer that. I'm sure Mike can answer it too, but they actually do pick up bicycle speed limits. If you've ever biked by one, you may have seen it. It just gets a little more complicated to actually try to pull somebody over. If an officer is, say, in a car, it's not practical to try to pull them over if the bicyclist is on a bike path. That would be dangerous and kind of challenging. And if an officer's on a bicycle, then they have to kind of catch up to them. So if it happens we don't have electric bikes in the police department, so we would have to be able to catch up to the bicyclist in order to stop them. So there's some just kind of practical challenges with how we might do that. But yes, you could certainly put signs up if the town wanted to do that, and it would document their speed.
Yeah, I thought part of the point of having those was to get people to, slow down themselves, even if you weren't around to pick them up. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Brooke?
I think for me, again, we're trying to catch a bylaw up to emerging technology and have it at least defined and recognized and establish some community norms in the bylaw around expectation for behavior on bike paths with these e-vehicles. And I do ride an e-bike. It is a pedal assist bike. It's a class 1. I don't have a throttle, but I do see a lot of, interaction between e-bikers and others on the multi-use paths that we have. And I think it's, to me, the value of, if there's an incident, there is the ability to say your behavior is against the law, right? As opposed to, we just don't like you going that fast. So to me, it feels like in a conversation with someone who's had an engagement with someone that hasn't gone well on a bike path, that having a law behind the expectation of behavior is valuable. And that's why I support this.
Thank you. Couple things. Number one, a lot of people who bike regular bikes go faster than 20 miles an hour. So I get why you're saying 20 miles an hour for an e-bike, but I pass lots of people, for unfortunately on Pulpus Road and not on the bike path, who are going faster than 20 miles an hour. Secondly, my question is actually for John Giorgio. So the scenario that pops into my head is I'm walking along the multi-use path. I get run over by an e-bike. I know that there's a bylaw in Nantucket that says if they're going faster than 20, or they have to slow down to 5, and it's clear that they haven't slowed down to 5 when they've run me over. Can I now sue the town for not enforcing their bylaws? Does this bylaw incur any risk to the town, making it liable because we have a bylaw that we actually can't enforce?
I don't believe that would be the case. Denise.
Okay. Okay.
Under the Massachusetts Tort Claims Act and what's known as the Public Duty Rule, the failure of the town to enforce a bylaw in and of itself is not grounds to establish liability against the town.
Okay, good. Then, okay, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, any comments, further comments from the public? And seeing none, may I have a motion? Or not? I realize we have motion fatigue at this point, folks, but hang in there. We've only got another 20 or so to go.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Second.
Thank you, Peter. And made by Peter, seconded by Chris. Joe?
Aye.
Hold on a second. 73. Okay. Jill?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Who am I missing? Who did I miss? Libby Gibson? You want to vote? Okay. Chris, oh, sorry. I got Chris.
I voted.
Did I get you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Denise, aye. There's only 6 of us left, so I had 5 little marks. Libby, did you have you wanted to vote? Your hand's up.
Sorry, I was looking ahead to the next article.
No cheating.
We're gonna get an honorary vote from Libby. Okay. All right. Article 74, Libby, over to you. I think this is just something technical, or?
Well, I just want to mention that the board actually voted not to put this article on the warrant, but that particular night got confusing and difficult with the rental car discussion and then the discussion we just had about the e-bikes. So it mistakenly got in the warrant. But really the board had actually voted not to make any changes to chapter 98 at this time because it was starting to get confusing about really what we were trying to accomplish here. So I think we would prefer that you do take no action.
Okay. I don't think there'll be a lot of opposition to that. Peter, go ahead.
What do you want me to do? Make a motion?
Motion, take no action.
Okay, I'll make a motion, take no action.
Second.
Excellent. Excellent, Peter. Seconded by Jeremy, who pipped you to the post here, Jill. Okay. Any further discussion on that motion that Peter so helpfully made? Nope. Okay. Joe?
Aye.
Thank you. Jill?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Aye.
Jeremy? Peter?
Aye.
Denise? Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. All right. That's it for the warrant articles for tonight and committee reports. Does anyone have a committee report they want to share? Seeing no hands raised, the date of next meeting is Thursday, March 6th. It's fully remote. And just as a reminder, next week's meetings on the 10th and 11th are also fully remote. And the 13th is a joint meeting with the planning board and the select board to discuss any articles and any motions that or the planning board has made. So yes, so with that, and then there's one other business. I'm looking to the committee. We have had, let's see, at least 2, maybe 3 public information sessions in the middle of April for anyone who wants to come and ask us about our motions. We have never had anyone attend. Looking through the minutes from last year's, I remember making the statement, we're never doing this again. However, it's not my call. So I am looking at because it's a meeting where only we show up, we're there for 3 minutes and we close it down. So it takes us longer to do roll call than it does to have the meeting. So I'm looking to this committee to say, I don't think we need this meeting in April. I don't remember the date. It's the 24th or 25th. But if the committee is determined to have it, then of course I will concede to the pleasure of the committee. Jill?
You know, Denise, I totally agree with you, but in light of the fact that we had the open meeting law violation and sometimes, you know, people do miss meetings, I'm still open to having one in April. And if you don't want to do it, maybe someone else can chair it, but I don't think it's bad to err on the side of offering more public comment at this time.
All right, Chris?
I think you offer ample opportunity for the public to come in and ask and see, and I think that's shown by the fact that no one feels they need that when we get to it. So I would tend to agree with you.
Okay. Peter, Jeremy, what do you think?
Well, it just strikes me that you have public comments and people ask questions and you let them ask questions of anybody. Isn't that the same net effect?
Yes, but yeah, it's, yes, thank you.
I think the difference is that you have a specific interest, and that's why you're on the call or coming to our meeting. When you have the general and you go through all of them, it's not a specific interest, and that's what's different. But if people attended, I'd be 100% in favor of it. But, I've seen it for, the 9 years that I've been on or whatever it's been, and I've never seen anybody show up. So I agree with Denise.
Okay. Well, in that case, I am saying that we will be, Steve Hunter, we will be canceling that meeting. So unless Libby or Brooke or John, if you have direction in.
Denise, I hear exactly what you're saying, and I don't enjoy holding informational sessions to which nobody attends. However, I kind of am inclined to say, why don't you just do it anyway? And if nobody comes, you can adjourn after 15 minutes, just to give people the opportunity. I've had a couple of meetings lately with citizens who've asked a lot of questions about town meeting. However, they never seem to ask them to anybody in town government. So it's a little hard to get people to attend town-sponsored meetings. I see there's a session, a program at the Athenaeum coming up. In fact, I think it was today, to have citizen discussions about warrant articles. However, I guess town staff could, or any town officials could be invited to that to help explain the articles. But quite honestly, it seemed like when I talked to somebody about it, it was sort of preferable that not happen. So I guess my sort of conclusion is, I hear what you're saying about why bother if nobody comes. But I think the inevitable outcome is, well, they didn't do it. They have this informational session, then they stopped doing it, and so I didn't get a chance to ask any of my questions. There's no good answer. And so I lean on the side of just offer it, and if nobody comes, then it's over. That's just my 2 cents, but it's up to you.
Well, here's a question that may be in between both these perspectives. There are many webinars and things that I've participated in on lots of stuff, government or other things, and you have to sign up ahead of time. Can we do something where if you don't sign up, ahead of time and there's no one there, we don't have the meeting, but we give everyone the opportunity to sign up? Or is that just an extra logistical hassle?
That's an extra logistical hassle and probably would violate the open meeting law and the public comment policy that the board has adopted. So, sorry, Jeremy.
Just trying.
Brooke?
Not that it's going to be helpful at all, but I do think the difference between people coming to individual, I realize you have a history of people not showing up, but the difference between people coming to this public hearing process and they wake up a week before the town meeting and start reading the warrant and are wondering, but the bottom line is you're really just talking about your emotions and your position on it. You're not talking about the articles themselves. I don't know. My only concern is that somebody wakes up this year and says, well, I'm paying attention and I really have a question. But they can always ask it on the floor town meeting too, so.
Okay, all right, we'll think about it. I mean, I can see the value either way. So, all right, we don't have to decide today, so Stephen, don't cancel it yet. Thank you. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. I want that back.
Okay, made by Peter, seconded by Jill. Roll call. Joe,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Denise, I thank you, everybody. Brooke, really thank you for being here, and Art, thanks a lot. It's much appreciated.
Well,
See you later.
Thank you for holding this so that I could come. I appreciate that. I'm a little disappointed in the outcome, but hey, so be it. It's the process. Have a great day, you guys.
Thank you. Bye.